Jesse Parker wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, the scent of engine oil clinging to his clothes like a second skin. His modest one-bay garage sat on the outskirts of a quiet rural town, forgotten by progress and overlooked by most, but it was home. A battered sign that read "Parker Auto Repair" swayed slightly in the warm afternoon breeze, its paint chipped like the man who owned it. Jesse had been a mechanic since he was 16, but life had hit hard when his wife passed away suddenly, leaving him to raise their daughter, Emma, alone. Now every wrench twist, every scraped knuckle, and every sleepless night was about keeping food on the table and hope in his little girl's eyes. That afternoon, as he debated whether to buy groceries or pay the electric bill with his last $40, the roar of a dying engine drew his attention. A dusty Ford pickup pulled into the lot, coughing black smoke as it sputtered to a stop. The driver's door opened and out stepped a woman in faded jeans, mud-caked boots, and a sun-faded baseball cap pulled low over her eyes. She looked like a farmer, lean, strong, but quiet. "Something's wrong with the engine. It started acting up after last week's rain," she said, her voice calm and even. Jesse offered a nod, grabbing a rag and walking over. "Could be a bad belt or water in the ignition. I can take a look if you've got a bit." The woman nodded and leaned against a wooden post, arms folded, watching him with a hint of curiosity. He noticed how her hands were clean, not the calloused kind that worked the land. And though she dressed the part, something about her was off. She didn't fit the mold of this town. Still, Jesse said nothing and got to work. As he leaned over the engine, he caught her gaze briefly and saw something flicker, interest, maybe. Or recognition. But he pushed it aside. He wasn't in the business of guessing people's stories. He was in the business of fixing what was broken. And this truck was just another job. He didn't know that under the brim of that cap was the daughter of a millionaire ranch owner. And he didn't know that this simple repair job was about to change everything. Jesse worked in silence beneath the hood of the truck, his hands moving with practiced ease as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. He was used to people dropping off their vehicles and heading out, but the woman, Clara, she finally introduced herself, stayed. She didn't make small talk, didn't scroll through her phone, didn't rush him. Instead, she stood nearby, watching him work with quiet interest, occasionally handing him a wrench or bottle of water like she'd done it 100 times. Jesse wasn't sure what to make of her. Most folks who drove old trucks like hers were talkers, quick to complain or boast about how they could fix it themselves if they had the time. Clara didn't do either. She asked about his tools, complimented his technique, and even joked gently when his ratchet slipped and he muttered under his breath. For a man used to solitude and silence, her presence was strangely comforting. When school let out, Emma arrived, her backpack bouncing and her face lighting up when she saw her dad. Clara greeted her like an old friend, crouching down to compliment the doodles Emma had made on her notebook. Jesse watched from under the truck, heart aching with a mix of pride and caution. Emma had always been curious, warm, and open-hearted, too open, Jesse worried. She didn't know yet that people sometimes left without warning, or worse, pretended to care when they didn't. But Clara didn't act like a stranger. She laughed with Emma, braided her hair while Jesse reattached the truck's fan belt, and even shared a granola bar from her coat pocket. When the job was done, Jesse stood up, wiping his hands. "It's fixed," he said. "Spark plugs were fouled, and your battery cables were loose." Clara nodded, her eyes locked on his. "How much do I owe you?" He shrugged. $50 is fair." She tilted her head, almost surprised. "That's low." "You sure?" "I don't charge extra for good conversation," he said dryly. Clara smiled and handed him the cash without argument. "Well, Jesse Parker, you've got yourself a rare thing here. Honest work, good heart, and a daughter who clearly adores you." Then, without fanfare, she climbed into the truck and drove off, dust rising in her wake. Jesse stood there for a moment, unsure why her words stuck with him so deeply, or why he hoped she'd come back. A week passed before Jesse saw Clara again. This time, she wasn't driving the old Ford pickup. Instead, a sleek black SUV pulled into his lot, its engine purring like a cat. Jesse looked up from under the hood of a minivan and instinctively wiped his hands, surprised. The SUV didn't belong on his lot, not unless someone was lost. But when the driver's door opened, Clara stepped out, her boots still muddy, her smile just as warm. Beside her was a man in a tailored gray suit, polished shoes, and an air of authority that instantly changed the energy in the yard. Jesse straightened, instantly cautious. Clara offered a small wave. "Jesse, I hope it's okay. I brought someone I wanted you to meet. This is my father, Samuel Hayes." Jesse's breath caught in his throat. Hayes. That name was as familiar as it was distant, owner of Hayes Ranches, Hayes Real Estate, and a dozen other ventures. Jesse had once fixed a tractor that belonged to a man who leased land from the Hayes family. "Nice to meet you," Jesse said carefully, shaking Samuel's firm hand. The older man studied Jesse with a calculating but not unfriendly gaze. "Clara's told me a lot about you. And your work." Jesse shifted uneasily. "I just fix things." "That's what she said," Samuel replied, then glanced at the shop. "But it's more than that. She said you took care of her truck without knowing who she was. Didn't ask for anything more than what was fair." Jesse crossed his arms, unsure of where this was going. Clara stepped forward, her voice soft but clear. "I wasn't honest with you, Jesse. My dad owns the land I told you I worked on. I wasn't hiding it to trick you, I just wanted to be seen as a person, not as an heiress or some label." Jesse looked at her, processing the truth. He'd known she didn't fit in here, but he never imagined that. Still, she hadn't acted like someone born with wealth. She'd gotten her hands dirty, laughed with his daughter, and sat beside him like they were equals. "So why are you here now?" he finally asked. Clara smiled. "Because I want to help you. I believe in what you're doing. And I believe Emma deserves to see it grow." Jesse didn't reply immediately. The weight of pride and possibility warred within him. But deep down, something told him, this was no ordinary offer. Months rolled by, and Jesse's world transformed faster than he ever thought possible. With Clara's support, both financial and emotional, the dusty, run-down auto shop blossomed into a full-service auto center. A second bay was added, new equipment brought in, and for the first time in years, Jesse didn't have to choose between paying bills or buying groceries. Emma now had a small study corner in the back office, and the smile she wore each day made every greasy hour worthwhile. Clara didn't just write checks, she worked alongside them, sweeping floors, organizing parts, and helping Jesse manage the books. She was still the same woman in muddy boots, only now Jesse knew she came from a world of wealth, yet never used it to look down on his. She chose to be here, and that meant more to him than he could express. One evening, after closing, Jesse stood outside the shop watching Emma chase fireflies in the twilight. Clara joined him, a quiet peace between them. "You really didn't have to do all this," he said, glancing at her. "You saved my truck, Jesse. But more than that, you showed me something rare, honesty without pretense, kindness without strings. I needed that more than I realized." Jesse looked at her, his rough hands shoved into his back pockets. "And what do I have to offer you in return?" Clara stepped closer. "You already have. A place that feels real. A family that isn't bought. You reminded me what matters." For a moment, Jesse said nothing, the weight of everything he'd endured and everything he'd found swirling in his chest. Then, quietly, he reached for her hand. "You know, this shop's always been about fixing what's broken. Turns out, it fixed more than cars." Clara smiled, squeezing his hand. "Turns out, it fixed me too." As stars blinked above and Emma laughed in the distance, Jesse realized that what began with a simple repair had turned into something he never expected, a second chance at life, love, and something solid to build a future on. He was still a mechanic. Still a single dad. But now, he wasn't alone. And for the first time in a long time, everything felt exactly right.